So you see, in a very important way, America's remarkably close relationship with Israel works to China's advantage because it creates problems for the Americans that the Chinese can exploit. So American foreign policy is, in my opinion, remarkably foolish these days. The Chinese strategy in the Middle East is very different than the American strategy. Let me talk first about the Americans. First of all, it's important to understand that the Americans have a long-standing involvement, a long-standing deep involvement in the Middle East. And during the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union competed in the Middle East for a long period of time. Second point you want to remember about the Americans is that the United States has a special relationship with Israel that fundamentally affects its policies in the region. The United States is profoundly committed to supporting Israel. And this has a huge impact on America's policy across the entire region. I believe, for example, the main reason that the United States has terrible relations with Iran and why there is no prospect of the United States improving its relations with Iran is because Israel is so antagonistic towards Iran. And Israel goes to such great lengths to make sure that the United States and Iran remain bitter enemies. So what you see with regard to American policy is deep involvement in the region, deep involvement in the politics of every country in the region. But because of the special relationship the United States has with Israel, its relations with countries like Iran are poisoned. And its relations with countries like Saudi Arabia and Turkey and Egypt are also badly strained by the fact that the United States supports Israel in its policies towards the Palestinians. That's the American side of the story. China is a relative newcomer to the Middle East. China is deeply interested in the Middle East because of the oil in the Persian Gulf. There's no question about that. There's no question that China has a strategic interest in the Persian Gulf, or to put it more generally, in the Middle East. So what we see, unsurprisingly, is that China is becoming more deeply involved in the Middle East. And what you see is that China is trying to develop close relations with Iran and with Saudi Arabia. And of course, it's also trying to have close relations with other Gulf states because it gets oil from those other Gulf states as well. And the Chinese, unsurprisingly, are taking advantage of the fact that the United States has terrible relations with Iran and has strained relations with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states and Egypt and Turkey, all because of Israel. The fact is that the United States is deeply committed to Israel. It has a special relationship with Israel that has no parallel in recorded history. The United States gives Israel unconditional support. No matter what Israel does, the United States supports it. And the question is, why is this the case? And the answer is because of the power of the Israel lobby in the United States. The United States is a country which has a political system that allows interest groups to have huge influence on the policy process. There's no interest group that is anywhere near as powerful as the Israel lobby. And it has a profound effect on U.S. Middle East policy. And the Israel lobby, as you would expect, wants the United States to support Israel unreservedly. And we give Israel huge amounts of economic and military aid, as well as diplomatic aid. And we pursue policies in the region that are favorable to Israel. And as I said before, if you want to know why the United States and Iran have had terrible relations for so long and why there's no prospect of improving those relations, all you have to do is look at how Israel itself and the lobby, the Israel lobby, think about U.S.-Iranian relations. And it's quite clear both Israel and the lobby want to make sure that the United States continues to have poisonous relations with Iran. Well, I don't think there's anything the United States can do to change its policy towards Israel and towards the Middle East. The lobby is just too powerful. But the fact is that there's no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats on the question of Israel. Whether you have Kamala Harris or Donald Trump in the White House, both of them will support Israel to the hilt. It's just the way it works. So that's effectively how I see American foreign policy being made. So you see, in a very important way, America's remarkably close relationship with Israel works to China's advantage because it creates problems for the Americans that the Chinese can exploit. The United States has all of these naval assets now in the Middle East that should be deployed in East Asia, or at least most of them should be deployed in East Asia. But the United States is not deploying those assets in East Asia because they have to be in the Middle East to help Israel deal with threats from countries like Iran and from actors like Hezbollah and Hamas. And furthermore, right, it's creating opportunities for China to gain greater influence in the Middle East. This again is not in our interest. So in the Middle East, we're being hindered in our efforts to pivot to Asia, as we are in the Ukraine war. And furthermore, given our relationship with Israel, it's very difficult for us to have good relations with all of the countries in the region, which presents opportunities for China. So American foreign policy is, in my opinion, remarkably foolish these days.
By the way, this video is just a glimpse. For the full story and deeper insights, click here and visit our website.